getting close to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. As we know, one of the important services is called Neder. It's the annulment of vows and expressions. So here we are with the Mishnah. We're going to study page 14, but we start with the Mishnah on page 13b, Tractate Nazir. Hareini Nazir v'Nazir kshiye li ben, meaning someone committed himself to be Nazir, and he said, I'll be Nazir when I have a son, meaning that we are here with a situation of two Naziruyot. First one is the regular one, which we explain is a 30 days period, and then the second one is upon having a son. So it means, Tosfot explained that he thought that he will be able to complete his first Nazirut before he have a son. Now, just remember, when it's written was way before the modern technology, but even with the modern technology, Tosfot explained to us that it can be a different time. It's not always 100% exact the time of the delivery of the child. So התחיל מונה את שלו, ואחר כך נולד לו בן. He began his period of Nazirut. As we explained, Nazirut is the acceptance upon yourself the three main points, which is not to drink wine, not to cut to a haircut, and not to contaminate to a dead body. He already started that period of commitment of 30 days, and then all of a sudden, ואחר נולד לו בן, meaning he's not completed the 30 days period, משלים את שלו, ואחר כך מונה את של בנו. He needs to continue his original commitment of Nazirut, and then he does all the process the Torah instructed us, as we learn, the shaving, bringing the sacrificial offering, and then he needs to have a new process of counting the days of Nazirut for his son, meaning he has here a precondition that when I will have a son, then I'll do it. So when he completed, he does the same thing. He does the tiglachat, korbanot, etc. Hareini Nazir kshiye li ben v'Nazir, which means first he accepts upon himself Nazirut when he will have a son, and then he accepts upon himself the second Nazirut, v'itchil moneh et shelo, which means that he accepts upon himself just general commitment, ואחר כך נולד לו בן, before he completed the Nazirut, מניח את שלו, he stopped counting the days of his Nazirut, but he's not shaved and he's not bringing the offering, ומונה את של בנו, ואחר כך משלים את שלו. So he need to stop the counting of his days of Nazirut, but he's not shaved, he's not bringing the offering, and then he count the Nazirut of his son. So since he accepts upon himself first the Nazirut, so it's right away when he have his son, it's have an effect, even if he's in the middle of other Nazirut, and then when he completed the Nazirut of his son, he go back to the others and complete it. By Rava, so now we are dealing with different circumstances. We start with the first one. Rava inquired, Amar hareini Nazir לאחר 20 יום, meaning he accept upon himself stam Nazirut, regular manner of Nazirut, meaning he started when he's at 20 days, ומעכשיו 100 יום, so from now on 100 days, which means even, Rosh explained, even from now it will be an effective. So, mahu, כיוון דהלין 100 ב-20 לא שלמין, since these 100 days cannot be completed within the 20 days left until the term takes effect, לא חיילין, so it's not taking effect, או דילמה כיוון דהתלי גידול שיער לבסוף, since you have the growth of hair at the end, So therefore, chaylin, so they take effect right away. So therefore, he needs to start the 20 days, and then basically he needs to start the 20 days, stop at the 3 days when it's a regular manner of Nazirut, and then he have 80 days to complete it. So Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Beracha, asked a question about Sfirat HaOmer based on this sugya. If it was Thursday night and a person forget to count the Omer, and then all of a sudden on Friday he realized that the previous day did not count the Omer. But the problem is he already accepting upon himself Shabbat earlier. One of the things that happened with accepting Shabbat earlier is the question of Sfirat HaOmer. If you can do the Sfirat HaOmer of the previous day or not. So the Taz, to raise a Zahav, one of the commentators on the code, asked the same way. He said it was a community that have no shofar, and they passed Rosh Hashanah and they couldn't find a shofar, and then they daven Mariv earlier, and all of a sudden after the daven Mariv, guess what? They found the shofar. So now they ask a question, can they blow the shofar now when they already daven Mariv after Yontiv or not? So the Taz said that if the people in the community are aware that they find the shofar, meaning if they knew that it's going to be a shofar around, they will not daven Mariv earlier. So with the assumption that hypothetically speaking can happen, he said that they still can blow the shofar. Anyway, it's a discussion. So the Gemara asked a question on Rava, v'tiba elei nezirut mu'etet, let him inquire about a short, which is 30 days nezirut. So why Rava asked a question for a long term? So they said, chada migor chada kamibayala. So what happened here, they said that he raises one predicament as a result of the others. So it means that this question comes from the other question. He asked about how you take the Nazirut of 100 days is based on the previous question that he asked about Stam Nazirut. 14. Im timatzel omar Nazirut mu'etet, if you tell me that it's a short term of Nazirut, which is 30 days, kevan da'asara yomim mudi train, since it's only 10 days that left to the end, because he can start and stop after 20 days in order to count the next one, lo salik lei halein asara. So these 10 days is not counted. So it has to be a continuing one. Nazir ודאי נזיר ל100 יום כיוון דאית לתמנין יומין לבסוף, because it's the end, 80 days, salkin lei. So it's count or low, or you may say that you don't go this way, which means this based on the previous question. The Minchat Chinuch asked a question. Usually we said that Nazirut, the matter of Nazirite is 30 days. So the Minchat Chinuch asked, how do you know that it's necessarily only 30 days? He said, if he brought a famous Rambam. The Rambam said that they bring the Gemara, we study, if someone is about the day of his passing and he committed himself to be Nazir, so we say that we accepted, even it's that day, the day that he about to pass. So there is a metziut, there is a reality that can be less than 30 days and it's increased. ואם תמצא לומר, אמר הרי נזיר לאחר 20 יום ומעכשיו נזיר עולם, which means originally he accepted, good morning, regular Nazirut after 20 days, and then he accepted the regular Nazirut. אמר הרי נזיר לאחר 20 יום ומעכשיו נזיר עולם, מהו? Which means originally he accepted upon himself a regular Nazirut that take effect after 20 days, and then he accepted upon himself another Nazirut, permanent one, without making a specific one. So Nazirut Olam, it's a matter of Nazirut that is a permanent for all the person's life, but sometimes Meikel Betar, sometimes he allowed to cut his hair, etc. So when he does that, he needs to bring a korbanot, a special offering. So Mao, mi chayla lei or lo? You're going to tell me that it's taking effect or not. So the Machne Ephraim is a book called Machne Ephraim. He asked a question. If someone said, Hareini Nazir od 20 yom, for example, someone accepted upon himself to be Nazir 20 days from now, 20 days period, and he conditioned it, if so-and-so happened, 20 days from now, I'll be Nazir. So the question is, can he change his mind from now to his 20 days? Why? Because the effective time for the Nazirut is 20 days from now, and it was a condition. So based on this Gemarrah, you say that you need to go before the Lisha'el Chacham, you go before the halachic authority and get a clear way out. But that's a discussion of Machne Ephraim based on this Gemarrah. אם תמצא לומר הכה, כיוון דאפשר להשתלו יחיילה, אמר הרי נזיר שמשון, לאחר 20 יום, מעכשיו נזיר סתם, מהו? So if someone make a Nazirut like Samson, permanent, and now is a regular Nazir, so they said, הכה לא אפשר להתשיעו לי, מן חיילה או לא? So you mean to say that the first Nazirut take effect or not? So the Gemarrah go in a different direction to basically to indirectly answer this question. The way I explain it is the way that the Tosfot Arosh explains. Amar ke Moshe b'shiva ba'adar ma'u. We have the tradition, if you remember we studied in Tractate Megillah, page 13b, the Gemarrah said that Moshe Rabbeinu was born and passed the same day, which is the 7th day of Adar. So as we know, the day of the celebration is the day that the baby is born, the day that people cry, the day that the person passed. When Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, it's an assumption that people act of sorrow, they commit themselves to be Nazir. So if someone said, Amar ke Moshe b'shiva be'adar ma'u, if someone said, I will be like the Moshe Rabbeinu on the 7th day of Adar, so what's the halacha? It's considered that he's Nazir or lo, meaning he intend to express his sorrow, or is the act of happiness the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was born, and it's meaningless, meaning that meaningless in the sense of Nazirut. Pshot binayu kadmaita. Go for the first question. Harei Nazir lachar 20 machshav 100 yom. I commit myself to be Nazir 20 days and then 100 days. So what you do, Moneh 20 yom, you start counting 20 days of the 100, ואחר כך מונה 30, and then you count 30 days that take effect after the 20, ואחר כך מונה 80, and then you count 80 days, כדי להשלים נזירות ראשונה, in order to complete the first Nazirut. So this is a question that Rava asked originally, and it teaches us that the effective day of Nazirut start immediately, even it will be stopped in the middle of the next one. So indirectly questioned, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank was the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim. He wrote extensively. So one of the questions he asked, we know that the concept of Tosefet Shabbat and Tosefet Yom Kippur. Tosefet Shabbat is basically the addition time that we add to Shabbat. And Tosefet Yom Kippur, it's the before you accept upon yourself Yom Kippur, that time. So Shabbat, what you do with the Shabbat and Yom Kippur, you have one sanctity, one Kedusha of Shabbat, you have another sanctity of Yom Kippur. So when you have these two Tosafot, he brought the Chelkat Yoav. My brother-in-law published a book, Rav Mandelbaum, my sister's husband. He published a book called Chelkat Yoav. That it's basically, it was a great rabbi that unfortunately perished in the Shoah. that wrote an ingenious work on the Talmud called Chilkat Yoav. So he asked that question, Rav Frank brought it. On one hand, on Shabbat, we're accepting Shabbat when we said Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat. When it's come to Yom Kippur, right after Kol Nidrei, we say Shehechiyanu, which basically the acceptance of Yom Kippur. So he asked a question, why you don't do Kiddush before Shabbat and Yom Kippur? Meaning, if you're accepting the Tosefet before Yom Tov, so how about if you say Kiddush for Shabbat, you eat the meal of Shabbat, and then you enter the domain of Yom Kippur since you have a two Tosafot. But the fact that we don't do that, it's proof that you have it here as an exception, you combine the two together. Anyway, so now the Gemara go back to the last circumstance in the Mishnah, when a person accepts upon himself to be Nazir when he have a son, and he have accepted upon himself a general Nazirut. Nitma bimei bno, meaning somehow he contaminated to dead body. This Nazir, he's already Nazir for those days for his son, as we explained. He committed himself, if he have a son, when he have a son, to be Nazir, and while he is in that period of being Nazir, he somehow attached to a dead body, and therefore it's like between the two periods of Naziruyot, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter, which means in addition that because it's a two Naziruyot, it basically needs to go to square one. Needs to go to square one, which means if, for example, a person count 22 days from the original Nazirut, and then he have a son, and then when he have a son, he stopped the days of Nazirut and he start the Nazirut for his son, and 5 days later he became ritually impure. So the 5 days that he count from the Nazirut of his son, for sure is total abrogated, and he needs to recount them. Rabbi Yochanan holds that in addition to those days, also the 22 days that earlier are also total annulled, and he needs to recount even those days of his original Nazirut. That's Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soter. Reish Lakish said no, he does not negate the days he observed for his own term of Nazirut, only those of term of Nazirut for his son. So you see a crucial difference between the two. But Reish Lakish is way less days to recount again. Now the Gemara explain. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter Chad Nazirut Arichtai. So the entire Nazirut is considering one long one, which means from the beginning of the days that he count himself, that count for himself and not count for his son. So it's like two separate entities therefore when he contaminated to a dead body, when he was in the time of Nazirut for his son, it's already retroactively applies to both, which in a way, as much as they are separate Naziruyot, they are interconnected. The moment he's not completed the first one, he's still on hold. And he's not on hold for the first one, on hold on the second one, and since they're connected to each other, the moment that he became contaminated to a dead body, that's basically a total expunge all the previous two Naziruyot, and need to go to square one. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soter. Reish Lakish says it is not negate the days he observed for his own term of Nazirut. Why? He said Nazirut didei lechud v'divrei lechud. You can treat it each and every Naziruyot independently. So the Nazirut for his son, since it stay independently with no connection to the other one, so even he start with his own Nazirut, as we explain an example, that it's already 22 days for his own, and now we have another 5 days for his son. Since at the time of the contamination, he did not count the days that left for his own, the 8 days that left for his own, because he's now in a new counting of 5 days for his son, so therefore, one is not connected to the other. He needs to go to square one for his son, but not for him. I must tell you, when I studied it, I was thinking about the game Monopoly. You know that game? Monopolies, thank you, monopoly. So in monopoly you have a different, what is called, different trade, different things on the card. So you have sometimes, if you get the different numbers, right, you pull the different numbers, you need to go total to the very beginning, right, if you hit something, and sometimes you just need to go a few steps backward, but not totally to the very beginning, right? That's the difference between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish basically said that, look, each Nazirut is independent. Since the first Nazirut, the regular Nazirut, how many days? 30 days. And he count, for our example, 22 days. And then his son was involved, you know, the baby, and he started Nazirut for his son. So therefore, is now on hold. His son is now just 5 days, for example. So therefore, when he contaminated to dead body, you don't go for the first of the first, you just go for the second one. Since you count for the second one 5 days, he needs to go to square one just for the second one for his son, which is the only 5 days missing. But the 22 that he already did for himself, he still count. Versus Rabbi Yochanan that said that everything is out. The moment he touched the dead body, it's all done. So therefore, it's cancelled the 5, it cancelled 22, and need to go to square one for both. 14b, a little introduction. The Torah tells us in Leviticus 13, chapter 13 and chapter 14, about someone who became a leper. So leper, someone who's on his body, God forbid, have all these signs of leprosy. So it's a process for his ritual purity and time and offering, etc., etc. It's 2 chapters dealing with that. Now the question is, if the person was already Nazir, he's doing the time of Nazirut, and all of a sudden he became a leper. So even though in general you as a Nazir and leper is 2 contradictions, so you stop. You cannot count those days that you are leper. By the same token, here we said that those days that already he observed in Nazirut counted. So for example, if he commit himself to regular Nazirut, which is 30 days, 20 days later he became a leper, right? It's like on hold, he stopped it, and then he needs to do all the ritual of lepers, right? And then when he's done, he have 10 days left to complete it. Now we're going to elaborate the difference between this case and other cases. Nitma bimei tzarato, if he become ritually impure by coming into a contact with corpse during the days of his leprosy. Okay? So they said, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter. Rabbi Yochanan said, guess what? It's basically all those days that that he was Nazir is negate, and he need to go to square one. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soter. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter da benezirut kai, because he is in the middle of Nazirut, so even the days of the Tzarat is not count of the day of Nazirut, but since he started Nazirut and he is about to complete it, it means that he is in the middle of that Nazirut, so therefore those days are basically out, negate. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soter Tzaraat lechud unzirut lechud. You have to distinct between Tzarat, the leprosy, and Nazirut, which means you have 2 different the days that it's a contamination of Tzarat, it's a total independent. So since it's not count the day of Tzarat to the day of Nazirut, so it's not considered in those days that someone who count for Nazirut. So by contaminate to a dead body in those days is not take away those days that he count earlier. It's very similar to what Reish Lakish said earlier when it's come to his son. So this disputation between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, it's based on one entity. If the idea of contamination to a dead body abrogated the days that he count for Nazirut and the days that he about to complete. According to Rabbi Yochanan, in both cases, those contaminate the dead body abrogated the days for Nazirut. And according to Reish Lakish, one not contradict the other. Utzricha, we need both. דית מרבח כמה הייתה באי אמר רבי יוחנן סותר שם נזירות אחת היא. אבל בהא אימה מודל לרבי ריש לקיש דנזירות דנזיר לחוד וצרעת לחוד, which means that if you go by the Rabbi Yochanan's views, so those days negate the first days of the previous one. So it's considering Shem Nezirut Achat. The Nezirut is for all the classes. So therefore, when he counts the day of Nezirut for his son, you see it as part of his own Nezirut that just turned longer. Aval Beha, but in this case of suspension for leprosy, Eima Modele Leresh Lakish, Yomei said that he agrees with Reish Lakish the Nazir lechud ve'tzarat lechud, that the periods for Nazirut and Tzarat are considered distinct. Ve'it mar beha kama Reish Lakish. So if you tell me that over there is a case of Nazirut that stopped by this Tzarat, Reish Lakish hold that the contamination for a dead body basically negate the other days. אבל בהך, אימה מודל אל רבי יוחנן, so you may say that he agreed with Rabbi Yochanan that those days it's Nezirut Arichta is a long one, and therefore it's basically go back to all those days that he count for the other Nazirut. So tzricha, so you need to tell us that this disputation with Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish apply to both cases. So you see in the Mefarshim, based on this Gemara question, what do you do, for example, if someone have 29 days, like Gilbert asked, 29 days, and some enemies came in for all kind of reasons, which happen unfortunately in our history, and forcefully shaved the person. So he is Nazir. He is Nazir for example, 29 days. And now he have 1 day left, and outside forces took away his hair. So you tell him to go back to square one or not? So in general, just a little bit elaboration of this idea. Forcefully someone cut his hair. Can be the 29 days, whatever it is, before the end of the completion. The structure of Nazirut is 30 days. 30 days period, you're done with the 30 days, you shave, haircut, bring over sacrificial offering, etc. Problem is, since it was forceful, there is a concept called Yom Tiglachat Se'ar. What do? You go and count from that day and completed? No, the answer is you need to count the 30 days. So what you do is the 29. So you need now to go to the whole period. So in general, the term, it's called Yom Gidul Se'ar, the day on which the hair was cut. Because the whole concept of Nazir is the 30 days period of having hair. As you remember, we brought early the Minchat Chinuch that argued over the 30 days period. But here we are, Nitma biyom gidul se'ar. If something happened, became tameh, ritually impure, on the day of the hair growth. Rav Amar eino soter. Rav Amar, this does not cause him to forfeit, because he said it's not part of the Nazirut. So you see here, Afilu leRabbi Yochanan Damar Soter, even according to Rabbi Yochanan that said that he's forfeit the days that he count for Nazirut before it stopped. Hanemile, this particular notion apply, Hechadeka be Nazirut, that only when the person is within his term of Nazirut, Gidul Se'ar, Mishlam Nazirutu, but the extension for hair growth is a supplement to the term of Nazirut. So therefore Rav will hold that even Rabbi Yochanan agree that by not contaminate to the dead body, basically abrogated, annulled the count of the days of Nazirut. ושמואל אמר סותר. אפילו לריש לקיש דאמר אין סותר, התם שתי נזירות, הך אחד הנזירותה. Over there is two distinct periods of Nazirut involved. Here you have only one. So Shmuel hold that even according to Reish Lakish, this contamination of a dead body is basically abrogated. It's forfeit the essence of the days of Nazirut. Amar Rav Chizda. The same apply to a Nazir that contaminated to a dead body in the midst of his process. If you remember, we discussed it in the early part when we studied this tractate, that it's a process taking place. It's shaving hair, bringing offering, etc. Amar Rav Chizda, hakol modim, everyone agreed, she'im kidesh se'ar badam ein lo takana. He said that all agreed that if the hair was consecrated doing the sprinkling of the blood, he has no mean of remedy, meaning that you have this process. The process is the 30 days, the offering, the shaving the offering. So he said if his hair was still holy when the blood of the sacrifice was applied to the altar, and he then became ritually impure, is no way for him to conclude his Nazirut. He needs to go to square one, because he cannot bring another offering for that one. So the idea of En Lo Takana, we have three assumptions. Number one, the shaving, the cutting hair at the completion of Nazirut is a condition that is like a precondition. If you don't do that, then the rest is not applicable. Number two, the shaving of the cutting of the hair can be done only when he is physically, ritually pure. Number three is the shaving of the hair cannot be only if it's combining with the sacrificial offering because it's a mitzvah. If you remember, we studied in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 6, verse 18, that you take his hair and you put it inside the fire, that you bring the peace offering. That's part of the ritual. So because you have these three assumptions, right? So the Nazir cannot shave for this offering and cannot bring another offering in addition. So it means you put him in a position, the Rosh said, the Tosfot said, that he cannot be out of his Nazirut forever. One of the rabbis that makes a lot of Balei Tshuva was Rav Amnon Yitzchak. So sometimes you see a guy with a long tail that raised for years and years, secular guy, and Rav Amnon Yitzchak convinced him to be Baal Tshuva. And you see as a big ritual for him to put the tzitzis, and then he come with the scissor and start cutting all this big tail, tick, 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 tick over. Ali Bademan, according to him, Rav Chizda said what he said, Ali Bade Rabbi Eliezer, if you follow Rabbi Eliezer, Kevan de Amar, Tiglachat Me'akevet. Kevan, because Rabbi Eliezer hold that taking away the hair of the Nazir, that's Me'akevet, which means that as long as he's not cut hair, not shaved, Toch Melot HaYamim, so it's still considering it's standing within the days of Nazirut. Velisto, Ela Ali Bade Rabbanan, האמרי תגלחת לא מעכבת. If you go by the Rabbanan, they said when it's come to the cutting hair, they're not a reason to delay the others. Meaning the moment it was one of the offering was brought, he allowed with all the other prohibition for Nazir. You don't need another one. So what does that mean when Rav Chizda said, according to him, Kidesh se'aro badam, that I have no takana, so said Olam aliyot Rabbanan. Umayan no takana. What does that mean that he have no remedy? So they said, En no takana le-mitzvat giluach. There is no mean of remedy for the mitzvah of shaving. You cannot fulfill the mitzvah of shaving impurity the way that we required. Omar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina, Nazir shechkalu lo yamav, meaning that he completed the days of the Nazirut that he accepted upon himself and he still did not bring his offering. Loke ala tuma, he deserved to receive a malkot if he contaminated the dead body. Veino loke al hatiglachad, is not receive a flagellation for shaving his hair. Velo ala yain, and not for drinking wine. So even though he is prohibited for cutting hair and drinking wine, he still not deserve flagellation. Ma'ishna, what's the difference? Tum'ah de lakei, what's the prohibition of tum'ah? That Nazir reserve flagellation even after completing the days. The Amar Kra, the Torah said in the book of Bamidbar chapter 6, Kol yemei haziro la'Hashem, all the days that he became Nazir, he keeps himself Nazir into God. לרבות ימים שלאחר מלות כימים שלפני מילות. So these apply to all include the days that following the completion of his term, and it teaches us the same as the day prior to the completion of his term. So the Gemara asks, Yachi, if you tell me that the source of receiving malkot, it's because the Torah used the term kol yemei, all the days, atiglachat namei lechayev. So he's also liable for receiving malkot for shaving his hair. The Torah said, kol yemei neder nizro, tar lo yavor lesho, all the days of his vow of Nazir, no razor may pass over his head. לעשות ימים שלאחר מלות כימים. So make it the day, the days after the completion of his term, כימים שלפני מלות, just like the days before the completion of his term. So the Gemara said, Vetu, and there's another question, again from the Torah, book of Bamidbar, chapter 6, verse 4. כל ימי נזרו מכל אשר יעשה מגפן היין, all the days of his Nazirut, from anything made of the grapevine, לעשות ימים שלאחר מלות, כימים שלפני מלות. That we should also make the days after the completion of his term, like just the day before the completion of his term. So even after the completion of the obligatory term, drinking wine and cutting a hair should be punishable by malkot, just the same as tumah. So page 15, now the Gemara brings a source to Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, that the day after completion of the days of the Nazirut, so if he is contaminated to a dead body, he is need to complete those days missing, but not others. Shane hacha, when it's come to touching to a corpse, the Amar Rachmana, the Torah said in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 6, V'timeh rosh nizro, mi shenizro talui lo berosho, which means that because he did not shave yet, So therefore, it's not complete. And the Rosh Nizro is only applied to contamination, not the others. So the whole idea of receiving Malkot not applies to other form of Nazirut. Meitive. So now we challenge that from another Braita. Nazir shekalu lo yamav. Nazir whose days are completed, meaning he completed the day of Nazirut. Asur legaleach. He cannot shave, cannot cut his hair. Velishtot yain, drink wine. Velitame lemedin, until he does all the process. ואם גילח ושתה יין ונטמא למתין, הרי זה סופג את 40. So it means that he received this, the 40 malkot. You see from this Braita that there is no difference between contamination, isur tumah, or the other prohibition for Nazir. So that's basically unlike the view of Rabbi Yossi by Rabbi Hanina. So the Gemara said in conclusion, Tiyuvta is conclusive refutation of the statement of Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Hanina, and there is a discussion in Aruch HaShulchan how you treated Yad. If Yad is Miktzat Nezirut or not Miktzat Nezirut. The Beit HaLevi asked a question when you have someone committed a Neder, someone committed a vow. He said, I'm doing so and so, and he passed that time. So the Torah said, Bal yachel dvaro, you need to fulfill his word. So he asked a question, that apply specifically if he became contaminated, or if he drank wine or touched grapes. So he asked a question, based on this Gemarrah, you mean to say that he is in violation of Bal yachel dvaro, and he left it open. But in short, what you see here, that all this variation of statement of Nazir, especially when the things happen, it's not as simple as you think that you just move on. It's in some cases you need to change the whole schedule, and even sometimes starts from square one.